Hello and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 174. We're going to be talking about Zelda today since it just had its 40th anniversary in March, I want to say, while I was on hiatus. And we'll be doing kind of what we did with Resident Evil. We'll be doing a character list and a franchise ranking list. And I don't really have any pickups right now, so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. Alright, part one of this massive Zelda reflection is going to be on a character tier list. And unlike Resident Evil, which we just did, this particular list is exhaustive. It's not as exhaustive as I'd like. There's a few enemies that aren't here. Very big. It even includes the CDI games and the TV show and like the BSI Satillaware stuff. It's got the Nintendo Land game. So it's pretty dense. Thanks to Super Catnick for putting this together. So instead of being super exhaustive, thorough, I've decided that we're going to do things a little bit different for this one. So I've grabbed all the links, all the Zeldas, and all the Ganon/Ganondorfs and put them into their own tier lists. And then I've put best and worst supporting characters, best and worst enemies, and best and worst bosses. And we're gonna just rank those. And I've already gone through and grabbed the majority of who I want to put up here. Just for the sake of trying to speed this up a little bit, because as I said, there are 1,512 options without me adding anything else. And like I said, there's a couple enemies like Ocarina of Time P-Hats I would put in best enemies, but they're not here. So unfortunately, they're just not on this list, but that's okay. I will also not remember the name of every single freaking thing, especially enemy-wise. Like, I forget the names of these guys. Garos, right. So I'm going to be relying a little bit on the hopeful use of the names of the images to help me with things I can't quite remember the names of. But we have a lot to get through, and we have a game franchise list after this, so we should get started. Link. So what we're going to do with Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf is basically move people around. So, characters I don't have a very strong opinion of will probably be at the very end. So, like, I never played Triforce Heroes or whatever they called this game, so I don't have much of an opinion on these particular links. So they should probably be at the end. Cadence of Hyrule, kind of the same deal. I didn't play Link in Cadence of Hyrule, so I don't feel like it's really appropriate for me to say much about that particular iteration of the character. The rest of these I feel outside of Spirit Tracks Link, and Phantom Hourglass Link, because even though Phantom Hourglass Link is the same as Wind Waker Link, I never played the DS games, so I am not an expert on commenting. So we're going to leave Phantom Hourglass Link here as the indicator that these are the links I don't know much about. From there, we also have the CDI Link and the animated series Link in here, along with the 2 Hyrule Warriors editions, and then all of the main roster ones. I did not include animal versions of Zelda. I guess I should say up top, there will be spoilers in this video. I'll put that in words on the screen at the very tip top, but this is kind of your last warning before I start really getting into these characters. But I did for Link because, you know, Majora's Mask has the ultimate forms, Wolf Link and Twilight Princess exists. But I didn't really do that with Zelda, just their base forms. And then I also, with Ganon and Ganondorf, I kind of had to mix and match, so. All right, so let's start thinking about links. So aesthetically, And in terms of their role in the narration, I think that the best Link of all time in terms of the aesthetic, the way that they interact with the world, their toolkit, etc., is probably between Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Fire. That's a Capcom franchise. Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm going to give the slightest edge to Tears of the Kingdom Link because his toolkit is just the tiniest bit better with a little bit more versatility. Even though lost the psychic bombs that were really useful, I think being able to climb in the rain more frequently, being able to build things even if I don't really like that mechanic all that much, being able to ascend is really nice. I think Tears of the Kingdom Link is my favorite of all of them, with Breath right behind. From there, I would probably give my vote to Hyrule Warriors Link in terms of aesthetic, because I just think that scarf and the little bits of extra armor really make the character sing for me. It's basically taking the Twilight Princess Link and just giving it a little bit extra that I think it needed. So that is my favorite classic version of Link in terms of aesthetic. But you probably picked up pretty fast that I also really like Twilight Princess Link a lot. That is my favorite mainline classic look, since Hyrule Warriors is a spin-off. From there, I would pick Fierce Deity Link to round out my top 5. I think Fierce Deity Link is just really sick. Just love that character design so much. It's a shame it's only really locked to 2 games, Majora's Mask and Hyrule Warriors, but it's really effective in those 2 games. After that, I would probably give it to Adult Ocarina Link for number 6. I really like the classic Ocarina design. It really just brought basically all the links that followed into a sense of convention. Number 7, I really like Zora Link. I think Zora Link is a cool design, and I love the fact that he's just a guitarist. I really like that element of this version of Link. I have a soft spot for iconic NES Link. That is going to be the next one on this list for me personally. From there, it's probably Kid from Majora's Mask Link. Just in terms of the toolkit, is like a really nice combo of Ocarina's child and adult forms with a few new items and all of the masks. Just a really solid evolution. From there, I probably would give for the toolkit and the vibes Toon Link from Wind Waker. I really do like Toon Link's toolkit. Try to say that 3 times fast. And then Link Between Worlds would probably round out this top row. I really like how they found like a middle ground with this Link between Toon Link and Link to the Past Link. And the toolkit's really nice. After that, I think Four Swords Adventures Links. I always liked the colors on them a lot. They're very strong. Minish Cap, I would probably put next. I really like the sprite of this Link a lot, and that's probably why I'm placing it above Link to the Past Link, because the sprite work in Minish Cap is really, really well done. We'll do Child Link from Ocarina next. Probably Deku Link from Majora's Mask after him, because you really rely on this a lot in the early goings of Majora's Mask. Wolf Link. I like the vibe of Wolf Link. I think the design is great. The gameplay kind of sucks. Having to track down a whole bunch of spirit bugs. Not the most fun way to experience your Link, to be completely honest. From there, we'll probably toss the Age of Calamity Link after that. Very different look, completely armored. But it's a good look that builds a bit off of the Breath of the Wild Link. We'll do Goron Link after that. I wish the wheel was a little bit less out of control, but I do like Goron Link. We will put the Oracle Links side by side. We're starting to get near the end with the links. I'm gonna put Echoes of Wisdom Link a tiny tier above Link's Awakening Remake Link. Mainly because I think that Echoes of Wisdom Link is, even though you don't play as him, is just got a little bit more going on, more interesting. Link's Awakening Link is cute. I like the aesthetic a lot, but it's probably my least favorite vibe in the series that I've played, save Skyward Sword. I don't like the look of Skyward Sword. I never have been a fan, and this is easily my least favorite Link in the games. I will give the animated series Link a slight bump over the CDI Link because the CDI Link is a dumpster of a elf. At least, you know, the animated series put some budget into it. And that's not to say that the CDI games didn't have budget, but they don't look like they do. There's your links. Out of the 4 that are in this not played tier, I would put Cadence at the top, and then I would probably do Spirit Tracks, and I think the rest of that's fine. All right, Zelda. Favorite Zelda of all time is, unsurprisingly, probably to learn, a toss-up between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I'm going to give Breath the slightest edge, like I did with Link, mainly because I think that you get to be a part of Zelda's life in Breath, so you actually have a stronger personal connection. In Tears, she's sent to the past, and while she does some really awesome stuff that is explored in Age of Imprisonment, it's really just through flashback, and Link is just kind of isolated from her for most of the game. And then she does have the badass dragon transformation that I did not include here because you don't play it. But I do think that I like her Tears vibe because it builds off of Breath's really well, but it's just more distant. You're not as involved. From there, I feel like Age of Calamity and Age of Imprisonment Zeldas, since they're essentially the same characters, I'm just gonna put like this, because I think that since you get to play as Zelda in Age of Imprisonment, it's a little bit better than the supporting character in Tears. In fact, I will do this. I think that what I have briefly played of Age of Imprisonment, I have enjoyed how Zelda controls more than I enjoyed how Zelda controls in Age of Calamity. After that, I did not include the Smash versions of characters in this tier list, so I would probably put her at 5th place, to be completely frank, because I really like Zelda in Smash Ultimate. But since we're not doing that, I am going to instead put Tetra as my number 5. I think Tetra's great. I really think that she is the highlight of Wind Waker outside of Ganondorf and is the best character in that game until she becomes Zelda. So that's going to probably give you an idea of where I'm going to be putting Toon Zelda towards the end. On that note, let's grab the ones I have not experienced a whole lot. I have not seen Oracle Zelda that I can recollect anyway. Cadence of Hyrule Zelda I have played, so she can stay where she was. Let's put all of those Zeldas together. And I have not played Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks, so I will at least give Spirit Track Zelda some points because that's the first time she was actually playable in a mainline Zelda game, even if I will never play it. But Phantom Hourglass Zelda is fridged, and bad call, and Oracle Zelda is kind of just not existent for most of it. Following Tetra, it gets a little bit more dicey, but I'm going to give Hyrule Warriors Zelda spot number 6, and Echoes of Wisdom Zelda spot number 7, and Cadence of Hyrule Zelda spot number 8. And the reason why these 3 are here above everyone else is because they're playable. Tetra's not, outside of Hyrule Warriors, but she is a lot of fun in that game, so I point in her favor for being in this list where she is. But these 3 are playable in various ways, and while I do think that Echoes of Wisdom Zelda could have been executed better, i.e. not incorporating a Link toolkit onto Zelda, but trying to figure out something else that they could have done to have her attack things, I think that her general execution is really well done outside of that, even if that's my biggest complaint with that game. Cadence of Hyrule Zelda was fun when I played that game, but I don't like rhythm games all that much. So I think that she's perfectly placed right there. Moving past that, we're going to start getting into a whole bunch of not playable Zeldas. I'm going to plop Sheik here. I think Sheik version of Ocarina of Time Zelda is fantastic, mysterious, does great. It's really unfortunate that the moment Zelda drops the facade, Ganondorf captures her in Ocarina. It's annoying how often that happens in Zelda. So, unfortunately, adult Zelda in Ocarina is going to probably be on the lower side because of that, but Sheik is great. I also think that Skyward Sword Zelda, in comparison to everything else I'm going to say about Skyward Sword, I think Skyward Sword Zelda is the best part of that game. I love that design a lot, and she's definitely just more open and more flexible and led the way to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Zelda as my favorites. So she should be there. From there, I'm going to give Link Between Worlds Zelda the last spot on this row. She is a little bit more autonomous in Link Between Worlds than I think all the other Zeldas. Although, to be honest, this is more Hilda's game than it is Zelda's game, but that's okay. I think that, on the whole, Link Between Worlds Zelda is great, and she became the impetus for the Smash version, and so I think that that's worth putting in the top row since I'm not doing the Smash versions of characters on this list. From here, things get dicier. Child Zelda from Ocarina of Time is not captured. So she gets a point in her favor for not being captured the entire time. Adult Zelda is, but Child Zelda sets up things that you need to do and then kind of fucks off until you return to the castle, and then she escapes and becomes Sheik. So I think that this Zelda is better than most of the others because she was never captured. Unfortunately, the rest of them are. So we can't really give great points for anyone else. From here, I will say that I will give some points to Four Swords Zelda, mainly because I think she is really cool in the final battle with Ganon. One of my favorite instances of Zelda providing assistance. So she'll get a little bit of a bump in comparison to the others. I will give Ocarina Adult Zelda points after that, because we're now basically ranking their final boss moment, because all of these Zeldas are captured. And I think that the final fight with Ganon in Ocarina of Time is really memorable, and Zelda's a part of that, so I will give her some props there. Toon Zelda from Wind Waker is next, because I think that that's actually one of the best executions of Zelda providing support. It's just that the way that they handled Tetra 2 Zelda in Wind Waker sucks ass. It really does. Let's turn the most dynamic character we've ever put in the Zelda mold and lock her into an underwater castle for the half of the game. What a decision. But at least she's got a really cool final boss moment. After that, I would probably go with Twilight Princess Zelda, which is a bummer that she's down this low. Because I think there's a lot of things that were done well with this Zelda, but there's so many things that were done poorly, because she's basically locked away the entire game. But she does have like this mystique and intrigue about her that other Zeldas don't, and you actually get to interact with her some, but still, it's just not a good look. We'll do Minish Cap Zelda next. I think that this Zelda has some agency in the fight with Vati, if I remember correctly, but beyond that, she's pretty standard. We will give original Zelda from the original game some props. She doesn't do anything in-game to support Link, but she does do stuff before the game starts, separating the Triforce of Wisdom, hiding it in the 8 labyrinths, sending Impa to find you. So she actually has some agency. But then once the game starts, that agency disappears, and you don't see her for the entire game until you beat it. And then you just basically hand her the Triforce of Wisdom and cool. Link to the Past Zelda is next on this list. She is at least in the intro for a little bit, but then she's summoned away by Agronim for most of the game and doesn't really do anything to help you fight any, so she can be there. I am actually bumping Zelda 2 Zelda after all of the CDI Zeldas, because oof, I don't know which of these Zeldas is worse. Both of them had their own game, so Zelda actually had 2 CDI games that she was playable in. I'm gonna probably give the edge to this Zelda because I think her toolkit's slightly better, and at least she's very much Link-like in that game. I feel like Zelda's Adventure, she's like dialed back, and the game's way unfair. I will give the animated Zelda a couple pegs up. I think that she's pretty solid for an 80s TV show version of the character. The worst Zelda, though, is Zelda 2 Zelda. Zelda 2 Zelda has been asleep for decades following the deceit of her brother and a curse that knocked her into slumber. She's lying in a bed the entire game. And this Zelda, one right here that I'm moving around, that Zelda's not even in it. It's this Zelda from the past, and this is the one that Link apparently develops a relationship with because they kiss at the end. Why? Anyway, Zelda's really peaked in recent times, I'll just say that. Since most of these games, like the top 8, only one is from the 2000s. The rest have been in the last 10, 15 years. I think says a lot about how Zelda has definitely begun to shine in more recent times. Ganon. So I included Ganon and Ganondorf forms in this particular roster. So we will have Ganondorf and Ganon from Ocarina of Time, for example. And we have few. It's kind of difficult because, like with Breath of the Wild, we have Calamity Ganon, and then we have the final boss Ganon, and then we have Ganondorf, and then Dragon Ganon. So then we have Yuka, whatever this Ganon was. Who should probably not. I put him here because it's just awkward. Because they're not. It's not true Ganon, and then this Ganon is not even the main antagonist. So, Ganons I have not interacted with. Actually, I've interacted with all of them. So, Oracle Ganon's the only one that I really haven't seen, so he could go at the end. And we'll just go ahead and go from there. My favorite Ganon is still Ocarina Ganon. I think that this design and the N64 fight was incredible. One of my most memorable teenage experiences of all time, fighting that boss. From there, I would probably give Wind Waker Ganon the top Ganondorf spot. I think that this is the best Ganondorf's ever been. Really, really strong character design, and the boss fight with him is really excellent. Superbly done all the way around. I will give my second Ganon spot to Tears of the Kingdom. I think this fight was up there with the Ocarina one as one of my favorites of all time. This was such a good boss fight. I loved it. Blew me away. I will give Ocarina Ganondorf that second coveted spot. I think that Ocarina just did a lot right. There is a little bit of, I don't know if it's overt, but subtle racism perhaps in play with the Gerudo in Ocarina, that I think the series has managed better over time. But I still think that in terms of being an antagonist, that Ganondorf in Ocarina is really well done. And my favorite Smash version of him is Ultimates, that is based on this one. My third favorite Ganon is Four Swords Adventures, oddly enough. I really love this Ganon fight. It makes me kind of sad I don't have Four Swords Adventures anymore, because I thought that the sprite work and the mood and the lighting and the ways Zelda's incorporated and you use all 4 links was really fun. Really, really fun. So I think that that is my third favorite Ganon fight of them all. My third favorite Ganondorf, though, is probably Tears of the Kingdom. I think that this particular version is underused. I don't know how else to really say it. I just feel like there's something about this Ganondorf hiding for most of the game that there's something missing about him that takes away from his mystique and his awe compared to the two ahead of him. I love the design. I think it's a great design, and the fight with him is pretty fun. But it's not as engaging or memorable to me as the other two. Following that, we have my fourth favorite Ganon, which is Breath of the Wild Ganon. And not Calamity Ganon, but the final boss. I thought this was a great final boss fight. It really did a lot to bring Link and Zelda together in the final moments, and it's just a really good fight. It's a really good fight. I really like it a lot. I'm going to give Hyrule Warriors Ganondorf the fourth spot on the Ganondorf list. I think that this is a solid, wild design that takes its own motifs with Ganondorf and just runs with it. And he's got a fun moveset too. He's a little stiff compared to some of the other fighters, but I think that works for him. And he's got some wild moves you can build combos into. Pretty fun. I still have a soft spot for classic NES Ganon on the NES. Very basic, mind, but I think that just having him vanish and you have to like stab in the dark to try to find him is an interesting way to end that game and kind of set the stage for him being kind of frightening in a way, because all of a sudden you're just getting smacked by him in the darkness. It's a really cool way with limited technology of the time to make an intimidating boss fight. Our last Ganondorf is Twilight Princess, and that's primarily because it feels like he shouldn't be in it. It feels like they had to shoehorn him in for some reason. Because Zant was the antagonist, it was supposed to be about the Twily, and then all of a sudden Ganondorf just rolls in and steals Zant's thunder. And while there's some pretty cool fights, I think that the final fight being against Ganondorf instead of Ganon is kind of strange. I just feel like Twilight Princess Ganondorf is missed. It's a miss in the grand scheme of things. To rank the rest of the Ganons, I will give Link to the past Ganon the 6th spot. I think that this was a great evolution of what the NES game pioneered and gave him a lot of his moveset moving forward. I think that just the general awe of Calamity Ganon surrounding Hyrule Castle at all times is really intimidating. I think that I would pick Echoes of Wisdom Ganon over the others because it's a great evolution of the Link to the Past one. Link Between Worlds hybrid Ganon is at least distinct and unique. I'll give it that above these other three. These two are kind of interchangeable to me. I think I like the fight with Hyrule Warriors Ganon more than Twilight Princess Ganon, because Twilight Princess Ganon is just kind of weak because it's not the final phase. It's kind of a letdown that you then have to go fight Ganondorf on a horse and then on a sword fight. It's so prolonged and unnecessary. This should have, if you're gonna bring Ganondorf in, you should make Ganon the final form. And then last but not least is Zelda 2 Ganon, because he only shows up in the game over screen. Of the three in CDI and Animated Land, none of them are great. I guess I'd give the animated one the slightest of edges, but both of these look awful. All right, I'm going to resume recording later to save my voice, because we've already been going at it for about a half an hour. And we'll come back and knock out the supporting characters next. All right, best, worst. I got supporting characters, enemies, and bosses all lined up here, and we're gonna narrow these lists down to the top 10 for each of these categories. Worst bosses is already there. We just will need to rank them. But the hardest one will be the one we start with first, which are the best supporting characters. And I've got, I believe, 44 options here. Narrowing that down to 10 is going to be hard. But the top two are already there. I think that Midna is my favorite Zelda supporting character by a long shot. And then I absolutely adore Impa and Hyrule Warriors. So from there, who would I pick to follow? I think that I would probably grab Pura. She's definitely in the top 5. Riju would be in the top 10 at least. Sidon and Mipha are also going to be up there. Just to mix things up, I think I'll throw Marin into this consideration as well. Malon I've always liked from Ocarina, so I think she should be in the top 10 as well. I believe her name was Ashay. Yeah, I've always liked her. She was underused in Twilight Princess, but I've always liked her design. And then Urbosa would probably be around Riju. And since this goes to 11, I'm gonna go ahead and take Josha, who I really liked in Tears of the Kingdom, and she can be honorary. The rest of these 33 characters, Linkle. Oh, I miss Linkle, and Linkle's gotta be here. I love Linkle, my goodness. So, there we go. I think that's actually more appropriate now that I've remembered my bestie from Hyrule Warriors. I would actually put her above Impa, to be honest. I just think Linkle was a really refreshing take on a new stab at a character based on Link. So I really like her. I'm not going to rank the rest of these characters after this, but I do like them a lot, and I think that they're all great. However, we got to get to the worst, and I think that by far the worst character for me personally is Vi, or V. I just think she's really obnoxious, and I don't really like her at all. I don't like Rafali at all, and I want to make sure, yeah, I don't like him, never have. I think that he is just too up his own ass. A lot of people like Groose. I don't. I really don't understand the fandom around that character. So up there you go. I think that the king in Breath of the Wild is just a jerk who doesn't understand what Zelda actually wants and forces her to do things that she shouldn't be. And hey, speaking of that, we'll throw the Wind Waker King right next to them, because I just think that these two kings are awful for their respective Zeldas. Lana, almost forgot her name. Just doesn't look like a Zelda character. Just looks like generic anime waifu, and just not my thing. Child Ruto is really obnoxious in Ocarina of Time. Having to carry her around everywhere just kind of sucks. I forget your name. Malo, you are a jerk to your brother. You can go there. I don't like adult Midna, or whatever, Twily Midna, whatever they call her. I think that she was far more interesting in her original Impy design. This is, again, it just reminds me of Lana. It's just trying to like hypersexualize a character that didn't need it. And it looks like we got one more slot here. And I'm gonna give it to this little snot-nosed kid because he's gross. Honorary mention. Mito at least shows some growth. I feel like Sonia from Tears of the Kingdom is a really good final spot on this row because she's basically fridged. Her purpose in the game is to be fridged, and it's 2024. I thought we were past that point in this franchise, but nope. A woman must die in order to move the plot along. Ugh. Best enemies. Best enemies in Zelda. There's a couple odd choices in here, like the moon from Majora's Mask, but I don't know what else to categorize it as. It is an antagonistic force, but it's not a boss. You don't fight it. So it's in this list. We got 25 options. And probably surprising no one, a lot of my choices are going to be from Zelda 1. Because I think that likes are so good. I think that Wall Masters are so good. And I think the Patras are really, really amazing in terms of their stress level. I think that these three enemies are like the pinnacle of Zelda enemy design. Lynels are going to be up here too. I loved fighting Lynels in Breath of the Wild, which is the representative here. I think that they're great in that particular game. Don't top likes because an enemy that could steal your shit is still some of the most intimidating thing I've ever come across. Dead Hand, I would put at number 3. This is probably the best mini boss in the series. I'm gonna grab these little phantom limbs. I forget what they called them in Tears. Gloom Spawn. This is up there. Not quite as high as Dead Hand. But I think that this takes the Wallmaster concept and makes it the most scared shitless thing I think I've run across in a Nintendo game. It's so good. after that. I think Guardians need to be in consideration as well. I think they would fall behind. Actually, I think I would put them around here in the top 5. I think that's a good place. The Moon, just such a memorable moment. I think the Iron Knuckles and Ocarina are really good. They're really fun fights. I think the Redeads in Ocarina should be in the top 10 too. Last but not least, in the top 11 are these little Kirbys. What a great way to just sneak in a cameo and do it in like the most disturbing way possible. Super, super good. The rest of these enemies are great. Just didn't quite get into that top 10, but I think that they are really, really good for their own individual ways. However, we got to get into the worst enemies. Get this into a top 11, and surprise, surprise, it's going to have a pretty high level of Skyward Sword. Starting with these guys at the top. I hate these two types of enemies so much. The Stalfos, and I believe these are the actual Redeads. They just call them Stallmasters. They are so annoying in Skyward Sword because you have to swing your sword a certain way to cut through their defense, and I hate that shit. And the Dekus in Skyward Sword can also go into that tier because they are just really annoying. I'm going to leave the bubbles from Zelda 1 here because losing your ability to use your sword just sucks. I don't like fighting the Twily, whatever they call them, the Shadow Beasts. Because you basically have to kill them all in one fell swoop, and it's just annoying. Don't like it. Don't like it at all. What the hell are they called? The Yiga, Foot Soldiers, are up here because of their frequency. I actually like fighting them. In Breath of the Wild in particular, they just start showing up a lot the deeper you get into the game. And like, when you're just wandering around and like post-game trying to get the rest of the temples and you literally can't talk to anyone in the field anymore because it's them, or they'll just ambush you randomly out of nowhere, and they get annoying. I couldn't find the annoying little spider bugs from Twilight Princess. So we're gonna use these rats as stand-in for those because they're at least in the same realm as the Twily. But basically all the Twily enemies are just really annoying. These guys from Link's Awakening, specifically the remake, they suck. I hate trying to do specific things, and these are like the Dodongos in that game, and they're just terrible. This baboon is not fun. I don't like this baboon at all. Ook is just bad. The fish in Ocarina of Time, but mostly Majora's Mask, because Majora's Mask actually requires you to have to do a lot more with dealing with them. They suck. Hate them. Last but not least on my bottom enemy list, to be completely frank, it is the Moblins from Ocarina of Time, because they are just in one area and they are just patrolling, and then they'll just knock you so far back. They're really just obnoxious in that game. Best bosses. Oh my goodness. Twilight Princess is going to like walk away with quite a few awards here, including the best boss. I think Star-Lord is the best boss Zelda's ever had. I really love this fight, but really close to it, if I had him here, would be Ganon in Dragon form. Those two are my favorite fights in all of Zelda. But he's up there, so we're going to go ahead and start throwing in some Ocarina fights, and I think Volvagia and Bongo Bongo deserve to be in the top 3. Those are both great fights. I really enjoyed fighting, what is your name in this game? Argorok in this game. But I also got to give it up a little bit more to the other dragon that came back, Gleeox from Tears of the Kingdom. They are so fun. super fun to fight. Really intimidating. I think that the Gibdo change to Gibfos and turning them into moth-like creatures was a really inspired choice. I like them a lot. Goat, I think is your name. Yeah, from Majora's Mask. Also, very great boss. I think that I get all the moths mixed up. Mothula is also a fantastic boss in Wind Waker. I like the genie from Link's Awakening. I think that it's really inspired to have it trash talk you so much and basically tell you how to beat it. Blind deserves to be in the top 10. Favorite boss from Link to the Past. Really cool encounter. And last but not least, we will throw the entirety of Majora up there because I think Majora is a really interesting fight. Not perhaps the most dynamic or cool fight, but a really, really, really interesting one in terms of the way they laid it out. In terms of the worst bosses, Hyrule Warriors Manhandla is the worst boss. Oh, I get so upset when that boss shows up in a Hyrule Warriors map. The Unimprisoned? The Imprisoned? Just the Imprisoned. Yeah, this boss sucks. I hate fighting this boss in Skyward Sword, and you have to fight it so many times. It's annoying as hell, and it doesn't get any better in Hyrule Warriors beyond having more tools in your toolkit to deal with it. Shell, I think is her name. Sia. Speaking of waifus, that's all she is. Anglerfish is my fourth least favorite boss because it's the easiest boss in Link's Awakening. It's easier than the next one, which is Aquamentus, which is also really cakewalky. Racist, perhaps. This boss just throws slime everywhere and is gunky and really makes it difficult to just do combos on it. This guy's just a horse. He's basically an enemy but with a horse head. And I think the rest of this order is accurate. I don't have an 11th for worst bosses because I didn't think of one at the time. I'm just kind of glancing real quick here to see if anything leaps out at me that might not be really impactful. We could probably just throw a floating horse guy. Worst version of this. He's here because fighting on a horse kind of sucks. It's not as epic as they would like you to think. And Morph is here because it's just a tentacle. That's really all it is. Alright, well, that is the rest of the list. So let's just quickly do a nice slow recap of the best and the worst of Zelda, and then we're gonna go on into the franchise ranking after this. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed getting my perspective. Alright, there's a lot of Zelda games. I have played most of them, and first and foremost, I have to attack my least favorite Zelda, and a game that's in my bottom 10 fairly highly. Zelda 2. Zelda 2 is the antithesis of what makes Zelda 1 so great to me. It's a completely different game format. It loses nearly all of the tools that Zelda 1 introduced. It emphasizes sword combat so much that if you don't get into the rhythm of it, you're not going to have a good time. It adds in an experience system that's a little janky. And it's just not as good of a game. I gotta be real. That's my honest opinion. It is the shadow of this franchise, and it just pales in everything else's wake, in my opinion. It's just not a game for me. I know people who like this game. I know people who love this game. I'm so happy that they found joy in a game that I can't. that's totally fine. But this is my list, and that's my choice for my least favorite Zelda game, and one of my least favorite games ever. On that same note, Skyward Sword, another one of my least favorite games of all time. And the reason for that is motion controls. It's almost that basic, is that I don't like the Wii for motion controls that much. And for me, personally, playing Skyward Sword as it was originally released, I have not touched HD and I don't really plan to because I have other reasons I don't like this game, is trying to use the Wiimote that's not sensitive enough to do things that it demands sensitivity for, like fighting those Stalfos and Stallmasters that I was just telling you about. Or the Dekus, you have to slice things a certain way. You have to bowl bombs, but that doesn't always work out because the sensor doesn't work the way you want it to. It's really frustrating for me personally to play that game because it relies so much on accuracy with an inaccurate device. On top of that, I'm not the biggest fan of the art style. Outside of Zelda, I don't like the characters all that much. In fact, as you just saw, 2 of them ended up in my bottom 10 list of characters that are pretty important. The Imprisoned also is an awful recurring fight. I hate it. The best thing, honestly, in Skyward Sword for me is Zelda and Impa. And that's it. That's really all I like. Everything else is trash for me, unfortunately. So those are the 2 games that I don't like at all. The rest of these games have some merit to me, but ultimately I don't care for them up to, I would say, Master Quest, because there's a reason why I don't care for them. So Majora's Mask 3D is a really pretty looking 3DS game, and it does a lot with the art design and like some of the changes that were made to make the game better. Unfortunately, they made changes that makes the game worse, mainly with the Zora mask. They got all those mechanics rearranged in new ways that are worse, and it makes it so much more annoying to play as Zora Link, which, if you'll notice, I like Zora Link a lot. That was my favorite part of Majora's Mask. So that just really ruined that element. And then they also softened the difficulty. They did a few other changes to bosses, dungeon layouts. They got the ice arrow to be only context sensitive. So you can't just shoot ice arrows anywhere to make platforms. You have to shoot them in specific spots. This is just too much meddling in a remake that ruins the experience for those who played the original. There's ways that you can make a remake better. I look at Resident Evil 4, and I would even say Twilight Princess HD as good examples of a remake or a remaster, but Majora's Mask is not a good one. On that note, Zelda Link's Awakening. They changed the physics from the Game Boy game to actually have 3D physics. And for me, that makes some of the puzzles reliant on the finicky 3D physics system that it didn't originally have. The chess pieces are what leap to mind, but also the Yoshi doll minigame is far worse because of that. Also, the engine's not optimized very well for a Switch 1. So, like, the Mabe Village area with all the grass is a gigantic slowdown monster, at least in the original release. They did patch it a little bit, and I imagine it runs better on Switch too. I don't dislike the aesthetic. I like the music a lot. I think that the localization's a little bit tighter. It's mostly the same, but they did change a couple little things to make it better. But the physics just killed that game for me, and I really am bummed about it because I liked so much else about it. The original Hyrule Warriors on Wii U has been completely outclassed by Definitive Edition. That's basically why. Wind Waker HD. I think that Wind Waker HD is a good remake, but they got too ham on the bloom lighting and lost a lot of the original cell shaded magic that the original Wind Waker had. It does a lot of mechanical things that improve the game. They got rid of having to do so much with the Tingle Triforce Rupee Parade. Yay, that's fantastic. They got a fast sail so you can get to places faster. That's fantastic. But it doesn't look as good, even though it's in HD, as the original game, because it lost a lot of the charming art style. Cadence of Hyrule is a rhythm game, and I'm terrible at those. That's really the only reason why I don't have it higher, is that I can't get into it because my brain doesn't understand Crypt of the Necrodancer, and when I played the demo, it didn't understand that this game either. So the Oracle games I just haven't gotten super deep into, but they haven't really done much to make me want to get deeper into them at the same time. So that's the biggest reason why they're at the top of this area, is that I just don't feel that motivated to play them.
All right, we're back after a few days, and we'll continue with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Master Quest, which was a promotional item. If you pre-ordered Wind Waker on the GameCube, you got this disc, and it gave you the original Ocarina of Time along with Master Quest. And while it's neat, it's not really essential. It's not the better way to play Ocarina of Time. So that's why it's down here. But it is neat, and you can play it on Ocarina of Time 3D if you are so inclined after beating the game the first time, if I remember correctly. I never owned 3D, oddly enough, or it would probably be on this list. Wind Waker, I always have to turn to, and I mentioned this earlier, the Tingle Triforce Shard Parade. I've called that particular excursion that for at least 20 years on this website. It emphasizes the biggest issue with Wind Waker for me, and it is the sailing. There's just so much open sea sailing where you can't do anything except be in a boat and throw bombs and use your crane to pull stuff from the ocean and maybe fire arrows. I can't quite remember. It's been a while since I played Wind Waker. But the Tingle Triforce Shard Parade basically makes the absence of a couple planned dungeons really apparent, because it was likely going to be dungeons. They ran out of time, so they just came up with this mini game of searching the ocean for maps and then having them translated with rupees and then having to go out and find the shards in the ocean again. It's really tedious. It really brings down an otherwise excellent, charming game that I think on so many other levels would be like top 10 caliber if it wasn't for that. So that's my reasoning for Wind Waker being probably the lowest of the Zeldas I've completed that's not a remake or a remaster. A Zelda Twilight Princess. I think the HD version really improves on this experience a lot, so that's why it is so far down the list, because you can get Twilight Princess HD and have quite a bit of the complaints ironed out with not really any faults to counteract them, in my opinion. The two Hyrule Warriors games based on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are basically side by side. I have them both. I have not done much with them both. I feel like they are not as good as Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, which is much higher. Mainly because they seem locked into story beats and just feel less ambitious. I think Age of Imprisonment is a little bit freer from that feeling, because it's basically telling Zelda's side of the events of Tears of the Kingdom. Age of Calamity is like a Gaiden story. It's not anything that actually happens, so it's just kind of silliness. But both of them are good. Age of Calamity was like rough though on the Switch 1. Runs a lot better on the Switch 2. And what I played of Age of Imprisonment so far seems to not have that issue. And I do want to get into both of them more at some point, but as of right now, I think that's a good spot for both. Zelda the Minish Cap is Capcom's former flagship studio's fourth and final game. They had worked on the 2 Oracle titles, as well as the Link to the Past for Swords port to the GBA, and then they worked on Minish Cap. And out of all of those games, Minish Cap is easily the strongest, in my opinion. It's really visually charming, and it has a lot of good stuff going for it. The Kinstones can be a little obnoxious, because it locks a good chunk of the game behind putting 2 of them together, and you have to sometimes wait a long time to get 2 of them to work out. But on the grand scheme of things, I like Minish Cap quite a bit. I think it's actually my favorite of the Toon Link aesthetic choices that they made in that era. And I think that, as I said, visually is very strong, and it's got a good gimmick with shrinking down in size. I really just think the Kinstone concept just saps a little bit of the thrill of wanting to ever replay it. Four Swords Adventures. I rank this higher than a lot of other people might, because I thought this was a lot of fun even in solo. I did dabble with it a little bit with a friend, just one. This is a game that is so desperately calling out for the GameCube app on the Switch 2 to bring it back in a creative way so people can play a multiplayer online and just fudge the Game Boy Advance compatibility and make it work. I think it would be a wonderful concept to bring back. I think that outside of some asset reuse, that the game looks pretty good. It's got a pretty good soundtrack, but the dungeons are solid, and that's really what I think makes it higher than a few of the other games on this list. Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is the first Nintendo developed title that Zelda's the star in. She's the playable character. And that's important. It's a very important step for Nintendo to finally quit damseling Princess Zelda and let her be a heroine of her own in her own game. And I love it for that. And I like a lot about Echoes of Wisdom. The biggest fault for me is that Zelda can't escape Link. She has a Link mode, and that's really the best way to deal damage in the game. And I almost wish that they just didn't do that with having Link mode, that they just forced you to have to use the enemies that you get or gave you a different option to fight. So that's why it's down a little bit lower than a couple other games. Is that I really feel like Link couldn't not be used. And I wish that they had figured out something else to do with Zelda's melee abilities. Zelda Majora's Mask is rounding out the top 10. And it is such a surreal delight of a video game that does so much experimentation and just boldly goes where no other Zelda has dared to tread since. It's creepy and dark and menacing in ways that the series has really never experienced again at the scope that Majora's Mask does. And it's probably the best child Link in the series, discounting 2D games. I think that Child Link in this game has such a wonderful toolkit with not only his weapons, but with all the masks that he can transform with, as well as just build upon the attributes. The fact that it works on a 72-hour system where everything is scripted on top of all that is a really cool conceit that makes this game unique even to this day, because not many games are that rigid with when people are doing things. That if you don't show up at this particular point on the third day, you're not going to be able to accomplish the thing that needs to be triggered to get the mask for that particular event, for example. So it's a really cool game. I like it a lot, but it is not as good as the other 9 ahead of it. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition is my favorite Warriors game that's not Fire Emblem Three Hopes. And
This game takes everything that was good about the Wii U Hyrule Warriors and just takes it up a notch. It includes all the 3DS content in HD in a much more impressive package. There's so much content here. You're going to be playing this for literal weeks to unlock everything. All of the characters are distinct and unique and don't play like each other at all. And it's really cool that they just basically made this a love letter to the entire franchise across the board. Most people would probably place A Link to the Past in their top 5, but for me, I didn't get as engaged with Link to the Past because I skipped the Super Nintendo era. And by the time I got to Link to the Past, I had played Ocarina of Time and Link's Awakening. And I think both of those games ultimately push forward what concepts and mechanics that Link to the Past introduced better. So for me, on a mechanical front, I think Link's Awakening's better, and on a story presentation front, I think Ocarina of Time's better. That doesn't mean that Link to the Past is poor or bad. It's an excellent game that stands tall as one of the better Super Nintendo games out there. It's just not my favorite Zelda experience. I think that A Link Between Worlds, which is a follow-up of sorts to Link to the Past, is better. I think that the conceit of a low rule with Ravio basically acting as the Link avatar, you don't know that till the end. Good thing I mentioned spoilers up front. Selling you the weaponry that you use and basically making the dungeons be a freewheeling exercise of whatever you feel like doing. It's a really cool idea that set the stage for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's more free-form experiences. And it's probably one of the best 3DS games. I actually have the 3DS for Link Between Worlds, so I just cherish the fact that that was my first 3DS game, and I loved it. I think it's a really good game. I probably should replay it at some point, because I might actually deserve to be a little bit higher on this list than it is. But I think it's a really, really solid Zelda experience. Twilight Princess HD is up here for a lot of reasons. Mainly because I always thought that Twilight Princess did a lot right with the series in terms of evolving what Ocarina of Time was. And when I mean that, of course, Wind Waker went and did its own thing, and in some ways, mechanically, it's smoother and a better feeling game than Twilight Princess is. When I say that it evolves from Ocarina of Time, its aesthetic, its vibes, and its general like move kit is evolved from Ocarina of Time. It hinges back on Epona being an important part of the gameplay experience. And you can fight on horseback, which is actually not as cool as it sounds. But you can. You've got a lot of the same weaponry that you got in Ocarina of Time, but some of it's been expanded. So like you have claw shots that turn into double claw shots, which are just kind of silly, goofy things. But it's neat to be able to just fly around with claw shots everywhere. You also get to be a wolf. And this is probably the biggest area of improvement in HD compared to the original, is that they streamlined the annoyance factor of hunting down bugs to progress as Wolf Link in certain areas in HD. There's also a, like, I forget what they call it, but it's like a special dungeon that you can sync up the Wolf Link amiibo with to transport Wolf Link into Breath of the Wild, and the deeper you get in the dungeon, the more powerful Wolf Link is. Kind of one of the neater amiibo conceits of the time. But I love Midna. I love her a lot. She's my favorite Zelda character, and I think that she's just marvelous. And I think that this game is the closest to recapturing the surreal weirdness of Majora's Mask with its NPCs. They're a little bit uncanny, and a lot of them are just kind of strange. So it feels in a lot of ways to me like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask in terms of synergy being the closest those two have ever come together in a Zelda game. And I like it a lot, but it is not top 5 worthy. The original Game Boy version of Link's Awakening is, and I specifically put DX up here because DX is ultimately the better way to play it unless you are just super into the original Game Boy green vibes. The colors are not overbearing, and the color dungeon, while like it's hardly even worth the effort, honestly, but it's a cool little bonus mode on top of it. Plus, it's Game Boy camera compatible, which if you have a Game Boy camera, that's cool. But I just think Link's Awakening is such an important game in the franchise because it's set up whimsy. Zelda 1, 2, and Link to the Past don't really have whimsy in the same way. This game is a dream where Link is trying to wake the dream, or is it the dreamfish? Windfish. Ballad of the Windfish. I forget the name of our whale friend. And collecting all the instruments, but there's like an animal village, and just like the characters are odd in a delightful way. Everything just feels a little bit off, and basically that game set up Majora's Mask, which set up Twilight Princess, and set up the weird element that I adore in Zelda games. So for me, Link's Awakening is a very important game in the series, and it's the best of the 2D games outside of the original NES game. Tears of the Kingdom. This game was, at one point, the highest rated Zelda game on my list. Over time, after beating the game and having a lot of time to sit and think about its mechanics and how it approached certain elements of the game, I feel that it is the weaker of the two open world Zeldas, and I think that it is not as strong as the 3 ahead of it. I don't like the Ultra Hand mechanic, and there's so much hinging on the Ultra Hand mechanic in Tears of the Kingdom to make it difficult to enjoy the game without using it. But I think that between the clunky interface and the fact that your stuff breaks, it doesn't last, it really feels like a mechanic that is unnecessarily padded on and took a lot of the vibrancy of Breath of the Wild out of the picture, despite adding 2 new realms to explore, new enemies, actual dungeons with actual unique bosses. I think that my favorite Link is in this game in terms of the vibes that he has, and some of his powers are really neat. And I do love just like the scope of the world and how big it's become, but at the same time, the Ultra Hand being so central to everything, despite feeling so like bolted on in ways, it really just makes the game less structurally sound to me. Still an excellent game. I love it to pieces, but it is really a step back, I think, from the formula that Breath of the Wild set up. Ocarina of Time is a special game for me. I have huge nostalgia feels about Ocarina of Time. I would actually be a-okay if the rumors are true and a remake is coming for Ocarina of Time for the Switch 2. I wouldn't hate it. I love this game. It's certainly clunky now, and it doesn't look as great now. And, playing it today, in contrast to some of these other games and several other games that are not in the Zelda series, it definitely pales in comparison to its 1998 release. But that 1998 release was monumentally revolutionary for me. And it's a game that is
very much a central part of my teenage development. It's probably the biggest reason why I love Zelda the way that I do, to be completely honest, because it's just set so many of the staples of what I adore in motion. Stronger character emphasis and design, cool gadgetry and weapons that you can pick up, strong dungeon designs with compelling bosses and enemies inside, and just really resonating with the visual aesthetic and vibes. And the soundtrack, of course, being one of the best on the N64. It's just a marvelous game, and I will always treasure it as one of the best in the series. And again, if that remake's real, I will throw money at it. I will not get rid of my N64 original, though. I have, unfortunately, lost The Legend of Zelda for the NES multiple times in my life. It's really kind of funny how that has happened. I've owned it like twice as a kid, and both times the cart disappeared with people who didn't return it to me. And then I ended up having it on the GBA as part of the NES Classic Series, but then I bought it on the Wii, I think. And then got rid of the GBA one, and then I got it on the Famicom disc system, which I haven't played that disc, but I have it. And then I, of course, now have it on the Switch and Switch 2 through NSO. And I've played the Famicom disc system version for this channel very recently, actually, for the anniversary. And I think this game is so meticulously well designed for a game of its vintage. The fact that it's 40 years old and still has so much intrigue and mystery and the pleasure of exploration baked into it to this day, even with my internal knowledge of where stuff is, for the most part, it is so impressive. And it has really compelling boss fights for a game from 1986. Amazing enemies, designs that have stood the test of time in being reused across the franchise. And Link's toolkit, while pretty barren compared to some other games in this list, is very strong for a debut outing and certainly leagues ahead of most anything else in 1986. Really only Metroid, I think, comes close to the depth. So I think that the original Zelda is a masterwork and a super important game for me as a person. And that's why it's number 2 above so many other great games. But Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game. And it has been since I played it back in 2017, when I was in a really tumultuous period in my life, going between losing my job and being divorced and having to figure out what my future even looked like. And I had already pre-ordered Breath of the Wild, and I got laid off a month before it came out, and decided to keep the pre-order despite not having any income coming in, really. I still had my severance, used my severance to pay for it, and spent a week doing that. And that's it. I ate. I took showers. I cleaned the house a little bit here and there. I took care of my cats. But I basically allowed myself to heal through Breath of the Wild. And I think that Wii U version of the game that I still have, despite having the Switch 2 version now, is going to always be in my collection because of that importance of feeling a much needed respite in my heart, in my mind, in such a pivotal period of change. So Breath of the Wild, just personally, is a monumentally important game. But on a video games ranking system,
I think it's also monumental as one of the best open world games ever created. It took the formula of Zelda and basically cut loose so much of the series baggage that has been piling up since Ocarina of Time, and just decided to let Link wander about this gigantic space and explore and hunt down things to get stronger. Equip not quite a gazillion, but a million different types of weapons that ultimately do break. But unfortunately, one of the things that is an issue with both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild is I think the weapon degradation system is too sensitive. I think that they should have added at least like 10 to 15 more strokes per weapon across the board. But Breath of the Wild just really transfixed me with its visual aesthetic. I think it's the coolest the series has ever looked. I love the Ghibli-like vibes that it has. I love the musical soundscape. I love the major players in it. This is my favorite Zelda. Is in Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom Zelda is also really good, but I think Breath of the Wild Zelda is more compelling for me because she's actually in your time period. I liked the way that they approached storytelling in this game. I like the combat system. I like just the general freedom to do what you want to do in the moment at any point. The biggest issue with the game outside of weapon durability and Breath of the Wild is rain. Rain sucks. It makes you not able to climb things, and I hate it. And I think that the dungeon boss situation, while unique, was not very strong. And I think that they fixed that with Tears. But outside of that, they just nailed everything else. Everything else is perfect in Breath of the Wild, and I still love that game, and I will probably replay it on the Switch too sometime soon because it truly means a lot to me.
That is so much Zelda. We'll be doing something a little bit different in the next episode. Not quite sure what yet, but you'll just have to stay tuned to see. But I always appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you in a week or two time. Take care, friends.